Let's do it. Welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Thursday, November 19th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul Demain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com. Here are the news stories from the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. I want to let you know that the latest issue of News from Indian Country is out and in the stands. And here's the news. The U.S. Supreme Court will not hear an appeal from a group of Native Americans who think the name of the Washington Redskins professional football team is offensive. The court this Monday turned away an appeal from Susan Schoen-Harjo that ends the latest round in the 17-year-old court battle between the Redskins and American Indians who favor a name change. Harjo and fellow plaintiffs have also been working since 1992 to have the Redskins trademark declared invalid. They initially won. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office panel canceled the trademarks in 1999, but U.S. District Judge Colleen Kohler-Cotelli overturned the ruling in 2003 in part because the suit was filed decades after the first Redskins trademark was issued in 1967. The U.S. Court of Appeals then sent the case back to Cotelli, noting that the youngest of the plaintiffs was only 1 year old in 1967 and therefore could not have taken legal action at the time. But Cotelli rejected the argument, saying the youngest plaintiff turned 18 in 1984 and therefore waited almost 8 years after coming of age to join the lawsuit. The Court of Appeals upheld that decision in May, and the Supreme Court now has refused to review that decision. Connecticut's two casinos say slot machine revenue dropped about 4% in October compared with the same month last year. The Mashantucket Pequot tribe, which runs Foxwoods Resort Casino and MGM Grand at Foxwoods, reported Monday that slot revenue for October totaled $54.8 million, down from $57.1 million in October of 2008. The Mohegan tribe in Connecticut as well, which operates Mohegan Sun, said it took in $62.9 million from its slot machines, down from $65.4 million from October of 2008. In a related story, Foxwood Resort Casino, one of the world's largest, has failed to make full payment on its debt, leading to a default and another credit rating downgrade as casinos around the country struggle amid the severe recession. The Mashantucket Pequot, which owned Foxwoods, says it has paid $14 million of the $21 million semi-annual interest payment that was due this Monday on $500 million in debt notes. The tribe said it did not anticipate paying the balance within a 30-day period, resulting in a default. The tribe, which has been seeking to restructure billions of dollars in debt, said its efforts are separate and distinct from operations at Foxwoods. Megan Neuberger, director of Fitch Ratings, said that investors had long wondered what would happen if a tribe which has governmental sovereignty defaulted on its debt, and they may get their chance to find out now. Why did the Nazis hate the Jews? Why did the Tutsi hate the Hutu? Why did the Ojibwe battle the Sioux? Hate is everywhere, but the fundamental question of why one person could hate another has never been adequately studied, contends Jim Moore of Gonzaga University, who is developing a new academic field of hate studies. The goal is to explain a condition that has plagued humanity since one caveman looked askance at another. Gonzaga founded the Institute a decade ago after some black law students received threatening letters. It has since started a journal of hate studies, hosted a conference, and offered its first class in hatred last spring. The hope is that universities will follow suit, said Ken Stearns of the American Jewish Committee in New York, who has been involved in the effort. We want to approach hate more intelligently, he said. There is not even a good definition of hate, Stearns contends. Stern represented Denison Camook Banks as their attorney in one of the longest-running criminal cases in U.S. history, Loud Hawk versus the United States of America in 1975. Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius announced the availability of new funding to help ensure American Indian, Alaskan, Native children. She announced the availability of the new funding to help enroll American Indian and Alaskan Native children in health insurance programs during a conference call today, November 19th. Sebulus was joined on the call by Cindy Mann, Director of the Center for Medicaid and State Operations. And talking about health care, we have with us today a pre-recorded interview with Mark Trahant, a Shoshone-Bannock, who's been following the health care debate in Washington, D.C. Here you go, Mark. Let's take it away.
Mark, you've been following the healthcare debate in Washington, D.C., in fact, across the country. You want to give us a little idea of what, not only what your interests are in that debate, but what you see as developing overall and in regards to Indian Health Service insurance policies and its impact by this big debate. What's going to happen here?
Well, Indian country is going to be affected by this debate one way or the other. And so I wanted to kind of chronicle that and kind of see out through the process how Indian Health Service could be improved through it. What can we do to make it a better operation for Indian country?
You found that Indian Health Service wasn't necessarily a failure, as some people say. It seemed to indicate that in your writing that what you found is there was flaws mainly associated with proper funding.
Yeah, I think the funding is abysmal. That said, what the Indian Health Service does with that funding is pretty remarkable. There are few government agencies as efficient. I think it's also worth noting that in general, the U.S. population spends about $9,000 per person on health care. The rest of the world, including industrial countries, spends about $2,300 a year per person, and that's what IHS spends. So IHS is a lot closer to the rest of the world than the rest of our healthcare system.
More like a third world country.
No, more like Britain and Canada.
Oh, more like Britain and Canada. Well, that's interesting. How does that compare, for example, for prisoners? Did you see anything with that, like what they pay on the system of corrections?
Yeah, system of corrections is about, now I'm thinking off the top of my head, but it's significantly more than IHS, maybe 5,000 or 6,000. Medicare is at 9, so you can kind of see the sliding scale.
What do we see in terms of protections for IHS, Indian Health Services in general from Indian country in this healthcare debate?
Well, in the two bills now before us, there are two very different approaches. The House wants to go by adding the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act into the entire healthcare reform process and kind of wrap it up into one. The Senate doesn't do that, and the Senate will again consider the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act. But, and I think this is huge, if you look back at the Medicare and Medicaid debate from the 1960s, Indian country was completely left out. There's no language at all. I just read the entire bill, and I've tweeted about it in case anyone's interested. And there are numerous, pretty significant provisions for Indian country throughout the bill. One that I'm intrigued by is I could see, under the right circumstances, the first American Indian Alaskan Native medical school.
Oh, that'd be an interesting concept. Where can people find your tweets, and where can people find your website for your Kaiser series?
The Kaiser series, and I posted the tweets for those who are not on Twitter, is marktrahant.com. And the tweets are Trahant Reports. And I also write a poem every day called News Rhymes 4 Lines.
Indeed. One question, we're going to let you go on this here in a minute, but if you were... let's come back and have some more conversations in the next few days. But if you were to predict what might happen with these bills now, we've got one out of the House. The Senate, as of yesterday, was still up in arms yet. Where are we going with this? What do you see very quickly?
Well, quickly, my fear is that the abortion debate is so rancorous that it could bring the whole process down. I hope I'm wrong about that, and I have my fingers crossed. But right now, that's the way I see it.
Have they reported that bill out of the Senate for discussion yet as of today's Wednesday, November 19th?
They need 60 votes, and they're not there yet. They're working on it. I think they'll get 60 votes to report it out, though, because even folks who are against it, like Joe Lieberman, have said they'll vote for discussion purposes.
They're going to let it come out, but they may not be able to come to consensus and get a bill to the Obama administration.
Well, it's a lot easier to kill a bill than to pass a bill, so that's the thing they're trying to go through.
Mark, we'll keep in touch with you. I appreciate your time.
Very good.
Thank you, Mark, and we're looking forward to some of your updated reports in the future. Also, Billy Mills was the second Native American ever to win an Olympic gold medal. He accomplished this feat in the 10,000-meter run at the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, making him the only American ever to win the Olympic gold in that event. a former United States Marine. Mills is a member of the Pine Ridge Lakota. His 1964 victory is considered one of the greatest Olympic upsets in history. Mills will be speaking at the University of Minnesota Duluth in the Kirby Ballroom this upcoming Tuesday, November 24th at 7 p.m. That event is free and open to the public. And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank all of you and you and you for coming in here every now and then and checking in. Check back soon again. Miigwech.